Thanks for joining us on the Never Say Die podcast, episode 2. Jeannine, how are you?
I am terrific, thank you.
Excellent. And I hear things are happening at your house. There's a big reinvention.
Yes, for several years I've been working on trying to get an ADU built and get a permit through the city. Not an easy task, but it has started and it's so exciting, and the men working on it are old friends and good friends, and so it's been fun.
Wonderful. And just for anyone who doesn't know what an ADU is, it's a complicated term for basically a little granny flat or a secondary dwelling on your property. So you're getting a second dwelling that you might rent out or have for guests, right?
Exactly.
Now, Jeannine, we started a channel this week and we've just gone live and we've had a great response, and we're now on YouTube, Instagram, and we're starting this podcast.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, what does Never Say Die mean to you?
Well, there are so many things in my life that I have always wanted to do, and because I was working as an accountant, I kind of put them off. But I have always loved speed, car racing, racetracks, the smell of gasoline, and I thought, this is my chance to do them all. I can now go to the racetrack during the week. I can do whatever I want.
Now, we don't actually know your age. We discovered recently while you, had a stroke, right?
I had a stroke 5 weeks ago, yes.
And while you were there, I believe you've always told me you were born in 1945, but
yes.
Then we got to the hospital and you said to the hospital nurse, my birth date is in 1945, but you might have it as 1940. No, 39.
39. They had it as 39, yes.
But then when the nurse tried to triangulate, she said, I'll go and look at your Medicare data and we'll see what's on there. And then Medicare had it as 1934.
I mean, I get older every second here. I'm not too excited about that.
So technically we're just saying that we don't really know until we find that birth certificate. Or
right.
Maybe when you go through your passport, we'll get that answer. But I guess I wanted to ask you, what do you remember about when we first met and how I came into your life?
I had a rescue dog, 6-pound Chihuahua, the cutest little thing you've ever seen in your life. But she was so energetic. She was like, she had ADD or something. And I said to a neighbor, I need help. I don't know how to train a dog with these kinds of problems, or any dog actually. And he said, well, we have a neighbor who's a dog trainer. Here's his phone number. So I called him, and it turned out to be Ian, who came up that very day and said, yeah, I can help you with this. So we sat on my back patio and talked about little Gracie, and she was the most adorable thing you've ever seen in your life.
That dog.
Oh, everyone loved her. She would wake up in the middle of the night and play with her toys. She just was so much fun. Anyway, we proceeded to try to train Gracie. We were not terribly successful because of her, I guess, ADD, but we had fun anyway, and Ian and I got to be friends. We started talking about the things we love to do, and one of the things I've always adored doing is camping out, and his eyes lit up and said, me too, me too. And so we kind of went from there, started talking about our ideas for
businesses,
life and businesses,
everything.
Relationships, friends, you name it. And so we started meeting on a more regular basis, with the dogs always being kind of the reason we would get together. And then we sit on the back patio and drink tea or coffee and talk for hours about everything.
And then I think it escalated when you said, why don't we actually create this business called Wildebeest Nomadic?
Yeah. One day we were sitting and he said to me, I have ideas for businesses. And having been a businesswoman, I said, yeah, what are they? And he started telling me. And the first one or two I said, yeah, interesting. I can see the value, but actually it's not something I would ever be very interested in. Then he touched on something and my brain exploded. He talked about a car company using older cars like Hondas, who had great engines out of the...
I can dive in here. I knew about the Honda CR-V from the second generation. They had the stronger engine. It was all-wheel drive. And in around 2021, when we started this, the car was quite affordable. So it was kind of like a cheap off-roader vehicle, not for real off-road use, but for enough that someone was coming to the United States and they wanted a vehicle that has a kitchen in the back with a fridge and running water, and a little mobile shower and the tent on top and everything else.
Yeah.
It gave them the ability to rent it from us and go across the western United States and see all of the amazing geology and, have a vehicle that was also a home. We did that for 2 or 3 years?
3 years, yes. Yeah. It took off fairly quickly, and we had a lot of people from around the world come into Los Angeles and rent the car. I remember somebody rented it for 3 months, driving it around the West Coast into all the national parks. We had so much fun. Yeah. It was so much fun.
And we got a lot of compliments on the styling. So if you want to see those videos, maybe reach out. We can send you some videos and photos of the Wildebeest Nomadic vehicles, because we made these things look pretty amazing.
And we may do it again.
We may do.
Who knows?
Exactly. So then after Wildebeest Nomadic, we discovered that, we discovered that when you rent to renters, they tend to treat those cars as if they're brand new and they abuse them pretty hard, and it put too much pressure and the cars would break, and we didn't have the revenue from the rental to cover some of the breakages that we were incurring, especially with the catastrophic nature of some of those damages. But basically, after that, we shut it down. We've been friends ever since, and we focus more on the friendship and driving around and
Drinking a lot of coffee.
too much coffee. Yeah. So why do you think we clicked so quickly when, we have such an age gap? We only came together over dog training, but we just clicked instantly. Why do you think that is?
Because I think our minds are probably pretty much closer in age than our physical age.
How so?
Well, we like the same things. We love the outdoors, love camping, love cars, love animals. I mean, there's several lifetimes of conversations right there. And so we started going for coffee in the morning, and then it changed to sort of how we solve problems in our own lives and how we could do better in solving relationships and world politics. We differ,
Homelessness.
but we started talking about some really interesting things, and it awakened in me a part of me that had been dormant. I grew up in a relatively intellectual family and was schooled to go on to university and acquire as many degrees as I could possibly get.
And I believe you ended up babysitting RFK Jr. at one point?
I did, yes. When I graduated from college, I went skiing, and I sat on a chairlift with a guy who I guess I fell in love with, and I moved to Washington, D.C., did not have a job, moved in with 3 girls. One of them worked for Bobby Kennedy out in McLean, and she said, "We're looking for a governess, and why don't you come and work with us?" And I said, "Well, I know nothing, absolutely nothing about being a governess. I can play tennis and teach swimming." And so Ethel called me that Sunday and said in her kind of gravelly, aristocratic voice, "We really want you to come out and take care of the kids." And I said, "No." And then she called me the next week. I didn't have a job. I said, "Okay, sure, I'll come." So they came to pick me up in a limousine and took me out to McLean, and I was in charge of the 4 oldest Kennedy children.
Who were?
Joe, Kathleen, Bobby, and David. And they were lovely children.
I heard a different version of that. You said that RFK was a bit of a handful as a baby.
Yes, Junior, yes, he was. He was different from his siblings. For instance, we got a toy one day. Somebody gave us a toy. We took it out into the backyard near the pool, and I said, "Okay, we have a new toy for the pool, and we're going to take turns now." And he said, "Everyone can have a turn, but I'm first."
Right.
And I went, "Yeah, okay." He was sort of like that. He was an okay kid, but he was just a little bit more aggressive than, say, the others were.
Yeah.
The fun story on that is when everybody grew up, my godchild was at a rally that he was given, and she went up to him and said, "Oh, my godmother worked for you as a governess in the 60s, blah, blah, blah." And he turned to her and he said, "Please tell her I'm sorry," which I thought was fun.
Now, could you tell me a little bit more about, after college, after being the governess, who you were?
I was an airhead.
Right. How do you mean?
Well, I had no goals in life. I knew I wanted to work for myself. I was not particularly a good employee because I always wanted to change things. I started out by working in the stock market, and I started out working at American Express.
Didn't you study at Berkeley as well?
Yes, I went to Berkeley. I loved it.
I think we're going to circle back to that because you were there during all of those revolutionary...
Yes, right.
Okay,
The late 60s.
We'll come back to that later.
Okay. I've had an interesting life, and the only reason I had an interesting life is that when I left my very rigid family background, I decided to start saying yes instead of no. And somebody would say, "You want to go skiing in Vermont?" I go, "Yes." "You want to go water skiing on the Pacific?" I go, "Yes." "You want to camp in the mountains?" "Yes." Even though I hadn't done any of those things, I knew nothing about it.
Do you want to start a podcast called Never Say Die?
Yes. Yes. So anyway, I have had an extraordinarily interesting life, I think. And when I talk to other people my age, I realize I have had an extraordinary life.
Wonderful. Now, you've been through some pretty big challenges recently, one specifically with being your stroke. I know how big a part that's played in your decision making to live more fully, and I've seen that in how you've approached me. You kind of said, "That's it, let's do this. I'm not going out with a fizzle. I'm going to build up with a bang." And I guess I'd love to hear more about what's that internal process been like for you going through the stroke, but also like the epiphanies that have come with it.
Well, when you're lying in the bed in the hospital and all these people are peering at you and poking at you and asking questions, and you're thinking, "Am I dying? Is this what's supposed to be be happening to me? And my answer was, that is not what's happening to me. I've always said to Ian, I want to live to be 120, and what do I do to do that? And as I'm lying in the bed, I'm already thinking about when I get home, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to read, where I'm going to go, what I'm going to eat. It was a constant reevaluation of everything in my life, and it was thrilling. It was exciting to think that there was another life for me there.
And I know that right now we're very consciously moving you towards adventure, and we're going to capture it with the YouTube series that we're creating, which if you haven't checked it out, we are on YouTube. It's youtube.com/at Never Say Die, the channel, no gaps or spaces. Basically, we're moving towards some really crazy things. Like we're entertaining throwing you out of a plane and doing a skydive and hot laps in who knows what kind of cars. Like I'm really building.
I can hardly wait for that one.
Exactly. And I actually want to, at this point, put a call out to the audience. If there's things that are on your bucket list that you think might be enjoyable or challenging or really big bucket list items, let us know. I think we have comments on most platforms. You can guarantee that we can get those messages and suggestions through our Instagram, which is also the same handle. Never Say Die, the channel. No gaps, no spaces, no dashes, nothing. But yeah, we'd love to hear those suggestions.
Yeah, I would love it. I think you have to remind yourself constantly to think and look through 30-year-old eyes. You can never look through 85-year-old eyes because they're much dimmer and they are much less adventuresome. If you have a nephew or a friend or a niece who is kind of adventuresome, incorporate them in your life.
Well, I think you're touching on something important there, which is if you think about the 85-year-old and the 25-year-old, you think what's different in how they're actually thinking. A big part of what we're saying here is their expectation of who they should be at that age is very different, and that kind of determines how they act, what they do, what they move towards. And you're a paradox in that way. You've got this youthful energy and this zip and this zap and a desire to go towards crazy things. What is it about you that you think is different from the average 85-year-old?
I've never thought of myself as an age, and certainly not as an older age. I just don't think that way. When I think about what I'd like to do, is I'd like to go camping with Ian in the mountains. I'd like to spin the car around, when you slam on the brakes and you shift it like they do in the movies.
That's actually, I wrote that down this morning. That's going to be one of our episodes, is we're going to do burnouts.
Is that burnout?
That's burnout is a straight line, and then when we swing the car around, that's called donuts.
And that you see it in the movies and you think, oh my God, how did they do that? You can do that. And we did it once, and my heart almost stopped, and I thought, I could do this again.
And you will this week.
And I will this week. Okay.
Now, another thing I'd like to ask you is, what's something that people get wrong?
They think that you stop thinking critically and that your ideas are not as good as, say, a 50-year-old. You're just not as valuable. I recognized this totally when I was in the hospital with all these people helping me out of bed and in bed and asking me questions and holding my hand and asking me how I felt. I felt diminished. And I thought, I think older people allow that to happen to them. They'll say, well, I'm old and therefore I should use somebody's arm to walk down the steps. When in fact, I've said to Ian, do not let me do that. Mm-hmm. I will ask when I need help.
I made you walk here today.
Yes, up his 49 steps and up the hill.
It's only 20 steps.
Mine are 49.
I know, yours are 49. Mine's around 20-something.
But there's something about getting older where people diminish your value. And, maybe they didn't do that to Einstein, but most of us fall into that category where they feel that I should be taken care of or somebody should do things for me. I don't need any of that help. I mean, I'm great with Instacart and having people come over and fix my house and clean my house. I've always done that. I've never liked doing any of that.
So what drew you to the idea of creating a brand that we're creating right now, Never Say Die? What drew you to that?
Well, before I had a stroke, I was seriously considering doing a lecture series to adults 50 and over about enjoying life. And I was having trouble finding an audience. I was thinking about that. I talked to Ian about it a little bit and we were musing about it. And then I had the stroke and it became really clear. I didn't want to lecture. I wanted to, lecture through YouTube.
Just being yourself, basically.
And telling people what it's like to be 85 or whatever. And I don't think about dying, for instance. existence at all. I had a follow-up exam with my doctor, and they're giving me all these grim statistics about having another stroke and all that, and I'm thinking about switching over to the Mediterranean diet to lose some weight. I was not thinking about dying at all. And so I think you have to shift your focus to the youthful, positive, happy existence that we're each given that opportunity to have in life.
And I guess flowing on from that choice of perspective is something that you could impart to literally anyone from any age group. When we do podcasts like this, there's no way for us to know who's listening and who will like what they're hearing.
Right.
And I think that's quite a unique opportunity to be able to, share a message to the greater public. Is there anything that you'd say to anyone of any age with more specificity than any general, get out there and do it and all those things?
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that you think that people always have the ability to choose differently at any point in life?
Well, I think reading, for instance, different kinds of reading. Ian has introduced me to a whole new world of reading, much more spiritual, in-depth. That has opened up doors. But if I were to say to somebody who's 40, I wouldn't say, oh, enjoy life. I would say, read more, develop your friendships, and listen. Listen to what people say to you and understand it and act on your passions.
And on that note too, I wanted to say that if anyone's wondering about what books she's talking about, feel free to message us on the Never Say Die Instagram channel. It's the best way to get a hold of us. If you've got any questions about things you're going through in life, I've read so many books, it's just ridiculous at this point that typically there's a book that will help something about where you're at, and I can just send it through. Just a way of connecting. There's not any money gain for me if I send you these books, but it's just, if you're going through something and you don't know where to start, sometimes finding the right spiritual book that can help you deal with...
I have to tell you, some of them have been so good.
Like which one?
The one about sweetgrass.
Oh, Breeding Sweetgrass? I mean, that's not even a self-help book at all. That's just, there's so much self-help that's derived from a beautiful story in that one.
Yeah. And then I read the Zen.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle
I've read that one twice, and I'm going to read it again. And I'm looking forward to the third time. It's like reading a new book each time, and it makes you think.
What was the big takeaway for you from that book?
That I should celebrate my uniqueness, I think. I am different. I've been told all my life I'm kind of strange and odd, and I would try to be more normal. I went to therapy one time and said to the doctor, I want to be normal like everybody else. It never happened. And now I recognize that it's a gift.
Well, it's working for you. As far as I see you, you're doing amazingly. Jeannine, we could literally go on for hours, but eventually we've got to wrap up this episode. So I just wanted to...
Okay.
I know, but maybe we just make another coffee and we'll do this all over again.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Well, thank you for joining us. This has been the Never Say Die podcast, episode number 2, which is kind of our first episode together.
I've loved this experience. I know absolutely nothing about the technology. I knew what YouTube was and all that, but I never thought I'd be doing this. So when people say, let's go camping, go camping. They'll say, let's go and walk on the beach, do it, and talk and listen.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Be sure to check us out on all of our platforms. We are, of course, on youtube.com/@ Never Say Die the channel, Instagram @ Never Say Die the channel. And of course, you've found us on the podcast here. So be sure to subscribe and stick around, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Jeannine.
Thank you, Ian.